Right, recording started. All right, so I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands and waterways on which we gather today. We pass through the lands of the Camaragal peoples who have cared for country for countless generations. We pay our respect to elders past, present, and emerging, and recognise their enduring connection to land, sea, sky, and community. We honour their wisdom, culture, and resilience. And before I hand over to Nouman to do his mid-candidature review, I'd like to acknowledge the mid-candidature review panel. Today, the experts are Dr. Matt White and Dr. Chloe Gordon, who've come online with us, and they're chaired by the most excellent Professor Rich Ryan here in IPPE. And Nouman's PhD supervisory team, thank you, Professor Amanda Telford and Dr. Geetanjali Bhaskar as the co-supervisors, with Mr. Andy Bison as the associate supervisor end user, all led by the most excellent Professor Teresa Dickey as well. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to Nouman. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you and welcome to today's session. And thank you for being part of my mid-candidature review. Topic of my thesis is examining the association between teacher career choice motives and teacher well-being outcomes from I love teaching to is it Friday yet? A quick thesis overview. Our thesis is consisted of 3 studies. Basically, the first study that was a systematic literature review and a meta-analysis that was aimed at integration of theory. That's undergoing. We are working on that and we will be completing that soon. We have already presented study 1 in COC. Today's focus will be our study 2, that's cross-national analysis using TALIS data. TALIS is basically Teachers and Learners International Survey that's conducted every 5 years by Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD. And a third study, that's the qualitative study in which we will be looking for the lived experiences of teachers. We will be interviewing teachers from different career stages. Let's talk about the key variables in our thesis. Our very first variable, the core of this thesis is the motivation that we all know are the internal processes that energize, direct or sustain behaviors. Then we have adapted a concept from motivation, that's teacher career choice motives from Watt and Richardson. These are the reasons and values that people endorse when they come to teaching, like what brings them to teaching and what keeps them teaching. For typologies of these motives, we had 3 basic typologies: intrinsic, altruistic, and extrinsic. From these 3, intrinsic and extrinsic motives directly and perfectly align with the TALIS data. Like TALIS already have worked on intrinsic and extrinsic motives. Our second key variable or the main outcome of this association is teachers' well-being. That we all know is not only absence of ill-being, but also presence of positive functioning. For teacher well-being, we have both positive and negative outcomes like teacher job satisfaction, stress, burnout, and intention to stay. School climate was acting as moderator for this association, and we adapted the 3 school climate dimensions that were from TALIS data. One reported by teachers, that's teachers' disciplinary climate. Second, reported by principals from separate principal data, that is principals' academic pressure. And the third was student-teacher relations. Gender and experience acted as covariates. Now, why this is important? Our very own study in 2018 has reported that teaching is a high-stress profession globally. And further, it has been found that teachers have poor mental health as compared to other professions. Then OECD in their 2005 Teachers Matter report, they have alarmed us about teacher shortages and early attrition in many countries. And they have also called for attention to attract, support, and retain teachers. So teacher motives become very crucial to understand this complexity of job, like complexity of this job. So And teacher well-being has also been linked to job satisfaction, better performance, and classroom effectiveness. This thesis contributes in many ways, like theoretically, methodologically, empirically, and in many practical ways. Theoretically, first, it aligns and integrates self-determination theory, expectancy value theory, fit choice framework, like different frameworks and theories that are about motivation. This thesis integrates all together. Then it links motives with school context and well-being. Uh, Methodologically, it was first of the studies that are using multi-method design. Like for our first study, we had a systematic literature review and meta-analysis. Our study 2 is a cross-national study using TALIS data. And in study 3, we will be using IPA or interpretative phenomenological technique. That's a qualitative technique. Empirically, it clarifies the moderating role of school climate in sustaining motivation. And among other practical contributions, it contributes to international efforts to teacher sustainability and education quality. Here are the theoretical frameworks that we relied upon. First of all, expectancy value theory that focuses on the individual's beliefs about success and the values that they have. Secondly, self-determination theory that explains motivation through autonomy, competence, and relatedness. It also provides a lens to understand intrinsic and extrinsic motives, which are our core predictors in this association. Job demands and resources model helps us understand how demands and resources are integrated and how resources buffer the demands to influence teachers' job satisfaction. Finally, factors influencing teaching choice or fit choice framework. It explains the alignment between individual motives and institutional context. It also provides the typologies like intrinsic and extrinsic motives. These were our overall research questions. First, how teacher motives are related to well-being outcomes. Secondly, are there any differences in this association due to contextual factors and individual factors like demographics? And third, what mechanisms are there who explain this association and also how these changes, like changes to this association occurred with the experience? Like in study 3, we will be looking for teachers from different career stages, and we will be asking that how it went. What were the differences in their motives in the earlier stage, mid-career stage, and later? This is our overall hypothesized model, very simple but meaningful. Intrinsic and extrinsic motives are our main predictors, which are predicting the teacher well-being outcomes, both positive and negative outcomes. And this association is being moderated through individual and contextual differences. So this was about our overall thesis. Now let's talk briefly about study 2. This is our conceptual model for study 2. We have adopted 3 job satisfaction outcomes here that are perfectly aligned with TALIS data. Job satisfaction with profession, job satisfaction with environment, like satisfaction with the school in which you are teaching, and intention to stay. And similarly, we adopted 3 dimensions of school climate: disciplinary climate that was reported through teachers' data, academic climate that was reported through principals' data, also called academic pressure, and student-teacher relations. And intrinsic and extrinsic motives are major predictors of this association. We have research questions and hypotheses here. Basically, we had 3 main hypotheses for our study 2. The hypothesis 1 was controlling for gender and experience motives will predict job satisfaction and retention. Further explained, we hypothesized that intrinsic motives will predict higher job satisfaction with profession, with environment, and intention to scale, while extrinsic motives will have weak or inconsistent links with the outcomes. Secondly, we hypothesize that school climate will moderate this association, like motives and satisfaction retention association. And third, we hypothesize that associations will vary cross-nationally. Here's information about the data and participants. Data was, because this was the secondary data adopted through tallies, there were 260,000 lower secondary teachers from 31 countries and over 15,000 schools. Data was collected through separate teachers and principals questionnaires that were used into tallies 2018. This was public and de-identified data, so no permissions were required. In demographics, we have gender, mean age, average teaching experience, and important thing that the teachers that participated in this, they were from diverse contexts, like from urban schools, from rural school settings, and also from public and private school settings. Here are the softwares that we use for analysis. In our modeling approach, we had four-step modeling approach. First of all, we introduced the teachers level predictors like motives. Secondly, we introduced the school climate as moderators. All three dimensions of school climate acted as moderators. Third, in our multi-level models, we tested the motives into climate effects for cross-level interactions. And at the last stage, we tested the cross-national heterogeneity that was evaluated using forest plots. Let's take a look on our key results. These are the descriptive statistics that are mainly already discussed. Important one is that intrinsic motives were rated higher than extrinsic motives and hypothesized. Like intrinsic motives were higher than extrinsic motives. More people reported intrinsic motives. In our correlations, we had positive correlation between intrinsic and extrinsic motives. Secondly, intrinsic motives were strongly and positively correlated with all three job satisfaction outcomes. Like we can see that intrinsic motives were stronger. There was stronger and positive correlation between intrinsic motives and job satisfaction with profession, with environment, and intention to stay. And then we had job satisfaction with profession was most correlated with retention or intention to stay, while job satisfaction with environment was linked more to student-teacher climate. In our main effect, we can see that intrinsic motives were proved to be strong predictors of job satisfaction. Like for all job satisfaction outcomes, they were the strong predictors, while extrinsic motives were weak or inconsistent associations. They had weak or inconsistent links or association with job satisfaction outcomes. In our moderation model, we had the effect sizes that we had, they were very small and inconsistent across outcomes. So we can say that motives predict well-being largely independent of school climate, and contextual moderation effects were modest at best. So like we can say that school climate has not have too much to do with the job satisfaction or other outcome. If you are coming with intrinsic motives, you will have high job satisfaction, no matter what school climate is. And similarly, if you are coming with extrinsic motives, even if you have supportive school climate, you will still think about leaving and you will have intention to leave or lower retention. And in our cross-national variability, we can see that intrinsic motives were positive across nearly all countries. And they were strongest in Turkey, Australia, Israel, and Spain, while extrinsic motives show greater heterogeneity. And they were positive across UAE, Vietnam, Saudi Arabia, negative across Portugal and Colombia, and have mixed effect in European systems. Here are some example forest plots that show that intrinsic motives, this is intrinsic motives versus job satisfaction with profession, and it is extrinsic motives with job satisfaction with profession. We can see that intrinsic motives, all countries lie on the positive, while in extrinsic motives, we have some of the countries in negative, while some on the positive side. And this has continued with the other job satisfaction outcomes. Like here we have intrinsic and extrinsic with job satisfaction with environment, and the pattern remains same. Like intrinsic motives are all positive, while extrinsic motives fall on both sides of the slope, positive and negative both. And this one is for the third outcome, that was intention to remain in the profession or intention to stay. And almost same pattern. Some of the countries, only one, Vietnam, is in negative or intrinsic. Otherwise, all are on positive. So discussing these results or interpretation of these results, we can say that for intrinsic motives, they are the strong and consistent predictors of teacher job satisfaction and retention. And also they are broadly generalizable across countries. While extrinsic motives have were weak and inconsistent predictors. For school climate, our moderation effects were small and inconsistent. And so we can say that climate mattered less than motives. Theoretically, all these three theories of motivation, like fit choice, EVT, and SDT, they prove the centrality of intrinsic motives. All prove that intrinsic motives are central motives for basically in teaching. And in policy and practice, we should support intrinsic and social utility motives in recruitment and retention. And also we should avoid the over-reliance on extrinsic incentives. These are theoretical and practical implications almost already discussed in previous slides. For limitations, we had some limitations. The first one, because we were adopting the secondary data from TALIS, that was cross-sectional design. So it limited somehow the causal inference. So we need longitudinal data, and also we need the administrative data to link motives to observe retention. Like instead of just relying on teachers' self-reported data, teachers' self-reported intent to leave or intent to stay, we should observe and we should track the administrative data from schools, from Department of Education, so that we can have a realistic figure of how many teachers left in previous years, 1 to 3 years, and how many teachers stayed in previous years. So that will be the realistic data of retention or attrition, instead of just relying on teachers' intent. Second, similarly, this was self-reported data. And also we should also go for the observations and student reported data, as students are a main stakeholder of schools, and they can also comment on the teachers' job satisfaction during the classroom, inside the classroom, and how their relationships are with teachers. Third, the measurement limits. TALIS indices were very brief. They were very few items to measure each construct. So we need comprehensive scales. Contextually, we only relied on school climate, while there are other significant contextual factors that should be included in next studies, like leadership, autonomy, support, and workload. For future direction, we are already in our study 3, we will be qualitative and mixed method across career stages. This is a progress update for our study 1. That is being conducted under PRISMA guidelines and multi-stage screening. To date, we have retrieved 4,444 records, and 312 studies have been retained after abstract screening, title and abstract screening. And next, we will complete the full text screening, we'll finalize the abstraction, and conduct the inter-writer liability and moderator coding. This is our timeline that we scheduled, and we are working as per schedule. We are currently here presenting our MCR and waiting for this milestone to go back to Pakistan. And yes.
Thank you very much.
Remember.
Yeah. Thanks, Nouman. Rich?
That's the job.
As chair.
Well, I guess we begin with committee questions.
Well, committee, Chloe, you go first.
Thanks so much for your presentation, Nouman. I genuinely think it's a really interesting and important topic, and your slides were really clear and easy to follow as well. So well done on that. So I assume that with the motives, teachers are reflecting back on when they first entered the profession. So that means the data set can't account for any changing motives. Is that right? That's just a limitation of the data set? It's
Sorry,
just
teachers are reflecting back.
I'm assuming that it's just capturing their motives when they first entered the teaching profession. Is that right? It's not able to account, obviously, for any changing motives as they progress in their teaching profession. Is that right?
Yes, for now,
Yeah.
like for TALIS data, they only have accounted for the motives to come to teaching, like motives to
Yeah,
join
sure.
teaching. But in our
Yeah.
study 3, we aim to ask teachers what motives were there when they entered the teaching profession, and were there any motives that stayed, or they disappeared, or motives changes during the mid-career. And like we will be having 3 data sets there. Some of teachers will be initial career stages, some of the teachers will be at mid-career, and some of the teachers will be at the last career stage or near to retirement. So then we will see that if there are any motives that disappear or that change during the time or during the experience.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that. And I assume as well that they could have a combination of intrinsic and extrinsic motives because you sort of reported. So how was that accounted for in the analysis if the teachers had a combination of both, or could they only be one or the other?
For me, this is an like empirical debate that intrinsic and extrinsic motives can coexist, or they are independent of each other, or like they have any mutual association between them. So, and we need to explore, like this is a critical limitation of this study, and we need to explore the ways how we can include these that this effect, and how we can explore this that yes, there can be intrinsic and extrinsic motives both at the same time. Why we are only looking at intrinsic and extrinsic separately.
Oh, okay. But on the survey, though, could they fall into both categories, or were they only falling into one of the categories?
No, there were separate items to measure these questions, and we have operationalized these typologies based on SDT and fit choice framework. We have ourselves operationalized these typologies, taking from intrinsic like taking intrinsic and extrinsic concept from SDT and from fit choice framework.
Yeah, but each participant, though, could they fall into both categories, or you categorize them as being solely intrinsic or solely extrinsic in their motivations?
They could be high on both.
No,
They could.
0.244. So
yes, they could be. We haven't categorized them in a way, but we have included both of the all of these items that were in TALIS data that represent either intrinsic or extrinsic motives.
Right. So that could be accounted for, that they could score high in both, and that could be accounted for in the analysis, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay, great.
Thank
And the last question was just that the data was collected in 2018, which was 7 years ago. So could you just speak to what some of the potential implications might be for that in terms of, do you see that as a limitation at all, or do you see do you think you need to factor that in when you're talking about the implications of the findings?
When we started working on this, I guess the 2023 data results were not out.
Yeah.
So we adopted this 2018 data, but we can put this in our future direction that the latest survey results from 2023 tallies, they should be included or they should be replicated in this way, in this association.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chloe. Matt?
Hey, Nouman. That was great. I really enjoyed that. I thought it was really interesting. So I was really interested about that link between school climate and intrinsic motivation and job satisfaction. I thought that was really interesting. I think it's such a sort of prime study at the moment around teacher retention and recruitment and getting that deeper understanding of why teachers choose to stay in the profession. But what I was really interested in terms of that study is that construct around intrinsic motivation. Can you talk to that a little bit? Like, what did you see in terms of that construct? What was sort of intrinsic motivation?
Yes, intrinsic motives are the internal reasons that we have to join teaching. Like, I love teaching, I have passion for teaching, I want to serve the community, I want to be with learners, be with students. These are my personal drives, these are my personal reasons for choosing teaching. But in contrast, the extrinsic reasons are like, they are mostly about the money or about the benefits that teaching brings to me, like for the good salary, for long holidays, for social status, community status. So these are the extrinsic reasons that we have worked on.
And did you find, and so you sort of said you were going to look at, again, the like longitudinal changes in the in these intrinsic motivations. Is that you're sort of going to look at intrinsic motivations of early career teachers and like mid-career teachers and late career teachers? Is that right?
Yes, we aim to look
and
at,
then look at the differences there.
We aim to look at the longitudinal effect of these motives in our study 3. Like, we will be taking 3 groups of teachers. We will interview them. Some of them will be initial career teachers, some of them will be mid-career, some of them will be last stage of the career, near retirement. So then we can comment on this, that how these motives change over experience with increasing experience. But for now, because this data was cross-sectional, we can't comment on the longitudinality of these motives. Either they stay, either they change, either they disappear, or what happens to these motives which teachers have when they join teaching.
And so was it sort of thought that in the study 3, you'll try and capture that? So I'm really thinking that one of the outcomes, one of the sort of key findings are going to be the construct of intrinsic motivation for teachers. I think the idea that how do we foster that intrinsic motivation whilst we're developing and training teachers, or identify those intrinsic motivation drivers as teachers progress through their career. Is that something you're sort of thinking in that third study, when you're sort of collecting that qualitative data to develop that sort of construct?
Yes, we have this in our practical and policy implications, that we can support our policy makers or policy holders to introduce these, to identify teachers with intrinsic motives, to look for teachers who are having intrinsic motives, because we have found that intrinsic motives have the teachers who had intrinsic motives, they have higher job satisfaction and a longer intent to stay. So yes, this can be suggested to policy and practical implications.
I think one of the challenges you're going to have is the fact that often extrinsic motivations impact upon intrinsic motivation. So like there's a construct around obviously looking at motivation, but obviously self-efficacy. Self-efficacy would have an impact and motivation. I know one of the limitations is you can't control for every single variable, but there's going to be things that when you look at that construct for intrinsic motivation that contribute towards intrinsic motivation. Like, it doesn't just come from nowhere.
About self-efficacy.
Yeah, I'm just saying that intrinsic motivation doesn't come from nowhere. As sort of teachers progress through their career, and this is probably that's where this is probably fit into study 3, where you might suggest some influences on the intrinsic motivation.
Yes, we can include this in our study 3, and but the good thing is that we have like in our statistics we saw that people rate, like teachers in our TALIS data, they have rated intrinsic motives higher than extrinsic motives. So that's a good news for us that we already have teachers, more teachers with intrinsic motives, and if we want to retain them and if we want to like adopt those teachers for better retention, that will be easy.
So that's really good. Thanks, Jimin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Rich, any questions?
Just a follow-up on Chloe's question before. You have the data on intrinsic motives and you have the data on extrinsic motives. You can look at whether there's any added variance when you put them together. Is there any incremental variance on top of intrinsic motivation of having high extrinsic motivation?
So I think that came across a bit wrong. They are in the model together.
Yeah, they're okay.
Yeah, they're in the model at the same time.
And so, but a teacher who has high in both of those, are they more likely to stay?
Yes, teachers who have higher intrinsic motives,
And
like
high,
intrinsic,
yeah.
and high extrinsic as well.
Yes, because they're correlated, positively correlated in your data set. So they add together, they're both added to intention to stay.
But I don't think we would check that yet, but it'd be good to take it out to check whether.
That's what I'm thinking. The suggestion is that you check this to
Yeah, that's
see
right.
what that looks like.
Yeah.
Another thing is just in the method section, and it relates to all these questions. It's hard to know what the measure of intrinsic is and the extrinsic is because the items aren't listed. And sometimes they're called autonomous and sometimes intrinsic, but I think they're a mixture. But I couldn't see the items. So I think that would be,
We had that
there's
slide.
one
here.
example item in each.
Go backwards, or
There next, like we need to go next. More,
you come?
yes. More. More. I guess back. No, back. The last one. We have some alphas here. I think I didn't include the items. Like the items were like I love teaching, I like teaching, and for the extrinsic motives, the items were like teaching allows me more time for family. Teaching allows me better work-life balance. Like that were more oriented towards holidays, about salary, about social status, about satisfaction as like community member that I am serving community. But for intrinsic motives, the items are mostly related to personal satisfaction that I am working for.
So I just make a distinction between, it could be autonomous motives that aren't intrinsic, like, I want to help my society is an altruistic motive, it's autonomous, but it's not always intrinsic, for instance. So I must be careful about the terminology. Just one last question. You said that this data supported all three theories that you had out there. And I just want to ask you a question about expectancy valence theory. On this, in my reading of that theory, if something has utility, it's a good thing, and extrinsic is a utility. Is there any reason that they would predict that that's negatively related or not related strongly to outcomes in that theory? Wouldn't they say that both of those are utilities and therefore they both contribute? Do they make a distinction that intrinsic is better and
Yes, we do also have some statistics like that. Even extrinsic have weak or inconsistent links with the outcomes. So, and also we didn't, we are not saying that extrinsic motives are not good to have. Obviously, there are some extrinsic motives that everyone have.
Well,
But we
my
just,
theory question though is does the EVT theory distinguish one as better than the other? Or do they think that high utility is good in any case?
yes, they do talk about the values that are coming from utility. Like utility value is one of the values that teachers have.
Yeah.
And in our field choice or in SDT, we only talk about intrinsic or extrinsic, or they also talk about altruistic. So yes, this is how we have operationalized like on only into intrinsic and extrinsic to better align with the TALIS data that we were working on. So we can like explore this more, that how we can do like how we can operationalize the what typologies do we select for our analysis and what do we don't.
Well, thank you. It's a very, it was easy to understand. It's a very clear presentation. Thanks for.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Is there other questions from the audience?
Yes, please.
Let me address one of the issues that Rich was talking about the intrinsic versus the extrinsic. When you've got two variables that are correlated, it gets tricky because you've got the zero order correlations and they tell you one thing, and then you put them together in a multiple regression and one of them wipes the other out, and that gets tricky. Now, the two ways that you can play with that a little bit more is one thing that you can do is you can do a sum and difference transformation, and the sum and difference gets at a within person difference in intrinsic and extrinsic. And that's a little bit different than the between person perspective that you looked at. The other possibility is looking at an interaction effect. So that does high intrinsic, high extrinsic, high intrinsic. Is there an interaction between the two of those? So those are just some things to play with. I'm not sure that they would necessarily add anything, but they would be worth playing. My main issue is with the issue of climate. I find the results implausible. I can't believe that climate doesn't make a difference in the kinds of outcome variables that you're looking at. And so then I go back and I ask, well, why is that? Maybe it's you don't have broad measures of climate. You've got two components. And okay. I look at myself here in this institute, my job satisfaction and intrinsic motivation, I'm surrounded by people that are intrinsically motivated, and that's a motivator to me. Now, you could take your intrinsic motivation measure and aggregate it, and call that a contextual variable, and look to see whether you're in a school where there's lots of people that are intrinsically motivated, whether that has an effect or not, something along those lines. With the climate measures, these alphas, those are just the items. What were the ICCs? How strong was agreement among people within the school on these scales?
Like for school climate, this was alarming for ourselves too, that school climate didn't have significant measures. It's not significantly motivating this association. We basically included 3 dimensions that were school climate, academic school climate, academic pressure reported by teacher, principals data, disciplinary climate reported by teachers. That is about classroom discipline, that how much time I take to discipline my class, to calm my class before starting the lesson. And the third was student-teacher relationships, that how good the relationship between students and teachers are, how well students listen to teachers.
Okay. Climate is inherently a school level variable. It's not an individual variable. And so I'm assuming you took individual variables and aggregated them up to the school level, and you looked at the school level effect. Is that what you did?
Yes.
Yeah. And so I'm saying what was the ICC senior class correlations? How much agreement was there among different teachers on the climate measures?
Great question. I can tell you that so the principal one, I wasn't surprised in moderate because it's a principal level variable. The other two, yes, so if you look up the ICCs, I don't assume you know them by heart.
No,
Neither do I. So that's a great thing to look at.
thank you.
Okay, so
Thank you.
cognizant of time, any last questions? Any other questions here?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Ryan, thank you.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity. So I'm not sure I correctly understood your interpretation about the results between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation predicting to predicting the satisfaction. So can you just explain, can you just interpret your result, why intrinsic motivation showed a consistent result across the countries and extrinsic motivation showed the inconsistent result of the country? Because I couldn't see the exactly the what countries showed that result, because they probably I expected countries like the high GDP countries like Korea and or the Singapore, they might think that salary, that's okay, I don't care. The intrinsic motivation is more important to me. But probably some of the developed country and have a low salary, and they might say that for me the salary is important, important. Then we cannot say actually we should more support intrinsic motivation for teachers.
Well, we already are looking at the indices that how we clustered the countries and how we explain these country differences. Like either that can be GDP, that can be different school systems, like different cultures have different school systems. For India and Pakistan, teaching is different. There are different motives that bring people to teaching. There is more prestige in teaching profession in society. While in let's say Australia and New Zealand, teaching has more financial benefits, but there's no there's not that much prestige in this profession. Like that's a cultural difference. So we are working towards this, that how we explain these differences, why some countries have higher intrinsic motives, positive intrinsic motives, and for some countries the motives for intrinsics are positive and for others are for extrinsic negative. So we are not yet here that how we clustered countries, how we make groups of countries to explain these differences. Either that will be based on GDP, on school settings, on teacher or cultural different teaching or cultural differences. So for now, I can't explain these cross-national variations, but yes, there are cross-national variations that are apparent in our forest plots. Yes, sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Right, cognizant of time, so before we let Nouman off, just a couple of announcements. First of all, please congratulate Mona, who submitted her thesis last week after 3.5 years. 3.5 years she submitted her thesis. So, and also Professor Rich Ryan is giving a talk tomorrow with the Higher Education Learning and Teaching Academy, both live and online here at ACU. And also on Friday, Kelly Ferber here will be graduating at ACU graduations. And last but not least, if you can, don't forget, next Wednesday is also my brown bag and birthday, so please join us for that as well. But please, can you give a final applause to Nouman? Thanks very much for that. Thank you. All right, and Chloe, Matt, Amanda, can I ask you to stay online while I transfer you to the boardroom for the deliberation? Thank you. Sure.
Thank you so much.